He was 50 years old when he understood something most people never talk about. Fear doesn't always come as panic. Sometimes fear becomes routine. It wakes up with you. It walks beside you. It sits quietly while you pretend everything is fine. At 50, fear no longer shocked him. It lived inside him. Before leaving his country, he had a life that made sense to others. He had studied for years. He had worked for decades. He had a profession that people respected. He was a lawyer. People listened when he spoke. They trusted his words. They believed he knew what he was doing. But inside, something had been breaking for a long time. The justice system he worked in slowly stopped feeling like justice. Cases dragged on without answers. Decisions felt distant from truth. Ethics became flexible, negotiable, exhausting. He didn't become angry. He became tired. Tired of pretending the system still worked. Tired of defending things he no longer believed in. Tired of wearing a title that felt heavier every year. At night, after long days, he sat alone and asked himself questions he avoided during the day. How long can I keep doing this? What happens if I stay? Is this really the rest of my life? By the time he turned 50, he realized something frightening. Staying would be easier, but staying would slowly erase him. Leaving, on the other hand, felt terrifying, not exciting. Not brave, terrifying. But fear was already part of his life, so he chose a different kind of fear. He didn't leave with dreams of success. He left with exhaustion. He didn't imagine a better life. He imagined a different one where at least he could breathe. When he arrived in the United States, reality arrived faster. The first thing immigration took from him was not money, it was language. He knew what he wanted to say, but the words came slowly, too slowly. People finished his sentences, sometimes incorrectly, sometimes impatiently. He nodded a lot, not because he agreed, but because correcting felt harder than staying quiet. Every conversation reminded him of something painful. Intelligence doesn't transfer easily across borders. Experience doesn't either. Very quickly, he learned a truth every immigrant learns. Your past stays behind. Your diplomas stay behind. Your reputation stays behind. Your identity stays behind. In the new country, none of that introduces you. Only your usefulness does. He didn't have permission to work, but he needed to survive. So he did what survival demanded. He washed cars. Cold mornings, water soaking his clothes, chemicals burning his hands. Customers rarely looked at him. When they did, it was only to complain or hurry him. He cleaned hotel rooms, room after room, beds, bathrooms, trash. Other people's messes. Other people's lives. He learned how invisible this kind of work makes you feel, not because the work is bad, but because no one wants to see the person doing it. He delivered food, long nights, unfamiliar streets, waiting for orders that barely paid enough. Some nights he drove for hours and earned almost nothing, but stopping was not an option. Stopping meant falling. Financial fear became constant, not dramatic, calculated. He counted everything: rent, food, transportation. Sometimes he skipped meals, not out of poverty alone, out of planning. Hunger feels different when it's planned. At 50, expectations disappear. You stop asking where your life is going. You ask how long you can hold it together. And still, he started studying, not because he believed it would work, because doing nothing felt worse. Studying at 50 doesn't feel hopeful. It feels humiliating. You forget things. You reread the same page. You compare yourself to younger students who learn faster. Some nights he stared at his books and thought, "Who am I trying to fool?" During the day, he worked illegally. At night, he studied exhausted. Fear and fatigue mixed together. The fear of immigration didn't come in moments, it lived in his body. Sirens made his chest tighten. Knocks on doors felt threatening. Unknown phone numbers raised his heart rate. Even when nothing happened, his body stayed alert, always ready, always tense. Some days, hope appeared quietly, understanding one lesson, making just enough money that week, getting through another day unnoticed. Other days, hope disappeared completely, and he learned something important. Hope is not stable. You can't depend on it. You learn to move without it. At 50, he was not rebuilding. He was surviving. No transformation yet. No success story. Just endurance. And endurance is exhausting. Surviving for a long time changes a person. At first, survival feels temporary. You tell yourself it's just a phase, just until things get better. But when months turn into years, survival becomes your identity. He wasn't building a future yet. He was holding his life together with effort and silence. Studying became heavier over time, not because the material was harder, but because his mind was always divided. Half of his attention was on the books, the other half was on fear. Fear of making a mistake, fear of being seen, fear of being stopped. Some nights he fell asleep with books open on his chest, not from peace, from exhaustion. At 55, loneliness started to feel dangerous. Not romantic loneliness, practical loneliness. No one to call in an emergency, no one to help if something went wrong, no one to share the weight of fear. That's when he married. Not because everything felt right, because being alone felt heavier. At first, marriage felt like stability, someone in the house, a routine, a sense of belonging. But slowly, tension moved in. His wife was older, carrying her own fears, her own insecurities. Jealousy appeared quietly at first. Questions, doubts, suspicion. Every delay required explanation. Every silence felt like a threat. Arguments became frequent. Not loud at first, tiring, the kind that drains you slowly. He tried to stay calm, tried to explain, tried to avoid conflict, but nothing seemed enough. Homes stopped feeling safe, not physically, emotionally. Some nights he stayed quiet just to avoid another fight. Other nights, silence was the fight. Marriage didn't protect him from fear. It added another layer to it. After 1 year, the marriage ended. Not in one dramatic moment, in many small breakdowns. By the time it was over, he felt empty again. Older, more tired, less certain of everything. The divorce didn't just end the relationship, it triggered something worse. Immigration fear returned stronger. Paperwork, uncertainty, waiting without answers. He lived in suspension, not moving forward, not allowed to relax, just waiting. Waiting is one of the hardest things immigrants endure, because waiting means your life is decided somewhere else, by someone you've never met. Every letter in the mailbox made his chest tighten. Every unknown phone call stopped his breathing for a moment. He imagined the worst constantly. Being denied, being sent back, explaining to family why everything had failed. Through VAWA, he tried to legalize his right to stay and work, not with confidence, with desperation. He gathered documents. He told his story again and again. Each retelling reopened wounds. Time passed slowly, weeks, months. During that period, fear became physical. Sleep was shallow. Thoughts looped endlessly. His body was always tense. Some mornings he woke up already exhausted, not from work, from anxiety. He asked himself questions no one prepares you for. What if this country doesn't want me? What if everything I sacrificed leads to nowhere? What if this was a mistake too big to fix? He didn't share these thoughts. Immigrants learn to suffer quietly. When the approval finally came, it didn't feel like joy. It felt like his body finally letting go. He sat down. His hands shook. Relief is not happiness. Relief is survival easing its grip. For the first time in years, he could work legally, and legality, after living without it, feels unreal, like something borrowed, like something that could disappear again. Still, it changed everything. He could breathe a little deeper, walk without constantly scanning his surroundings, sleep slightly better. With documents in hand, he enrolled in a CNA course, not because it was a dream, because it was possible, because it was real. The work was hard, physically demanding, emotionally heavy, caring for people at their most vulnerable. There was no prestige, but there was dignity, and after years of invisibility, dignity mattered. He was hired. For the first time in a long time, he worked without fear of being questioned. No looking over his shoulder, no rehearsing explanations, just work. But stability didn't arrive at all at once. Fear doesn't disappear suddenly. It changes shape. Now the fear was time. How long can my body do this? What happens as I get older? What if this stability doesn't last? That's when he decided to continue, to enroll in higher-level nursing education, not chasing success, chasing sustainability. He studied slower than others, doubted himself often, but now doubt didn't stop him. It walked beside him. Some days were still heavy, some nights fear returned, but something had changed. Fear no longer controlled every decision. He wasn't free yet, but he wasn't trapped either. He was moving, slowly, carefully. He didn't wake up one day feeling confident. Confidence never arrived. What arrived was routine. And routine, after years of chaos, felt like something close to peace. Working legally didn't erase the past. It didn't erase the years of fear. It didn't erase the nights of anxiety. It didn't erase the feeling of being late in life. But it gave him something fragile and important: time. Time to think beyond the next bill. Time to imagine a future without panic controlling every choice. Nursing school was harder than he expected, not because he didn't care, but because his body carried years of tension. He studied after long shifts, his eyes burned, his concentration faded. Sometimes he read the same sentence over and over, not because he didn't understand the words, because his mind was tired of surviving. There were days he questioned everything again. Am I too old for this? Is this another mistake? What if I don't finish? These thoughts didn't come once. They came repeatedly. Fear doesn't ask permission. He watched younger students move faster. They had energy he no longer had, time he no longer had, and comparison hurt. Not because he envied them, because it reminded him of everything he had already lost. Some nights, after studying, he sat alone in silence. No music, no distractions, just thoughts. Thoughts about the life he imagined at this age. Thoughts about how different reality had been. Expectation and reality rarely meet in immigration. They pass each other. Still, he kept going. Not because he felt strong, because stopping would mean returning to fear. And he had lived there long enough. Resilience didn't feel heroic. It felt repetitive. Waking up tired, showing up anyway, failing sometimes, returning anyway, day after day. There were moments of quiet meaning, a patient holding his hand, a simple thank you, a moment of trust. Nothing dramatic, but real. These moments didn't fix his life. They reminded him why he hadn't quit. He didn't feel successful. Success felt like a word for other people. He felt stable, and stability, after years of uncertainty, felt powerful. Even now, fear hasn't disappeared. He still worries about money, about time, about health. He still thinks about everything he lost. But fear no longer defines every decision. He learned something important. Immigration doesn't reward effort, it tests endurance. It doesn't promise transformation, it demands patience. At 50, he became invisible. At 55, he almost gave up. Now he moves forward without certainty, but with intention. This story is not about winning, it's about continuing. About living with fear and not letting it freeze you. About understanding that progress can be slow and still be real. If you are listening to this and you are afraid to leave, afraid because you already left, afraid because nothing looks like you imagined, your fear makes sense. This life is heavy. You don't need to be fearless, you need to be persistent. He didn't become a symbol, he became a person again, with limits, with doubts, with a future that is still being written. Sometimes survival is the story, and survival, quietly lived, is enough.